Welcome, everybody. Good day, everyone, wherever you're viewing from. We're really honored to have you here for another Shamans Directory Live community event. And thank you all for taking the time to join us here today. I am Mayumi Beckers from the Netherlands, and I am one of the founding members of Shamans Directory. And it's always my absolute pleasure to be your host at one of our live events. And you're, of course, all very welcome to say hello in the chat and let us know where you're tuning in from. And the topic of today's session is practical spirituality, staying centered in a crazy world. A quite rich and timely topic, I believe. And our honored guest is author, teacher, and scholar of the Andean traditions, Joan Parisi Wilcox. And before we begin, I would like to share a little bit about Shamans Directory. So let me please take a little moment here. Shamans Directory is a non-profit global online platform dedicated to making shamanic earth-based services accessible to anyone seeking guidance and support on their path of transformation. And our vision is to unite medicine men and women from around the world, including original peoples, First Nation healers, as well as modern day lineage trained shamanic practitioners. And is really here to create a safe space and creating a safe place to share shamanic earth based wisdom, medicine, healings, and teachings. And aside from our online platform, we also host twice monthly live events to gather around a virtual fire like we are doing here today. So, through these offerings, we hope to inspire you to explore or deepen your connection to shamanic earth based medicine and wisdom ways, and to integrate all of these practices into your everyday life. And you can find out more about us to visit our website at shamansdirectory.com, where you can learn more and to join our global community. And if you sign up to our newsletter, you can follow us also on social media, and then you will be staying informed about any of our upcoming events and other offerings that are here from a greater shamanic community. So please also note that in these sessions that we offer, that we don't take live questions aloud, but we of course really welcome any of your comments here, and you're welcome to use the chat for that, and also write in all of your questions, as we are hoping to get through each one of them. And yeah, we will do our best to answer them during our time here together. And for those of you who do not know Joan yet, please allow me to share a little bit more about her. Joan Parisi Wilcox has studied the Andean sacred arts for close to 3 decades and teaches the tradition to students around the globe. She's the author of Masters of the Living Energy, The Mystical World of the Quedo of Peru, and 2 other books. She has written dozens of magazine articles, been interviewed for podcasts and radio, and appeared in several documentary films about the Andean mystical tradition and metaphysics in general. Through her blog, kentiwasi.com, House of the Hummingbird, she shares the wisdom of the Andes. Earlier in her career, Joan also worked with frontier scientists exploring the new biology, including the human biofield. She has served as mistress of ceremonies and lectured at bioenergetic conferences in the United States and Europe. Joan has also worked as a freelance book editor for publishers, specializing in books on metaphysics and frontier science. She loves to explore the boundaries of the known and collaborate with other curiosity seekers. Joan is both an ambassador and a member of Shamans Directory, and we are always really honored to have the opportunity to introduce her to our audience. Welcome, Joan.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm delighted to be here. And thank thank all of you for being here. We have a provocative topic today, and I'm going to be stretching myself a little bit, so forgive me if I kind of glance over at my notes and stuff, but I'm looking forward to a very rich exchange today.
Thank you. I'm sure that everyone else is also looking forward to this. And yeah, let's start. And let's start with also the basics, as the topic of today is about practical spirituality. And what does that mean to you? And how does it differ from more idealized or mystical notions of spirituality?
I'm going to start by using an analogy from science. Okay. Um, in almost all the sciences, whether it's physics or geology, botany, biology, there are kind of domains of inquiry. So there's the theorists, and they're the people who sit around thinking and looking at all the data that's been collected from the past and wondering about the deep down issues of things. Is an electron a fundamental particle, or is it made up of composite pieces? How does a plant use the sun to create nutrients for itself? So they're asking the big questions. And they're really valuable questions, but they're not necessarily useful until they're tested, which brings in the second domain of science, which is the domain of the experimentalists. So the experimentalists get the theory, and they're the ones who sit down and say, okay, nice theory, but is it true? How can we test this? And so they go into their laboratories and they devise the machinery and the experimental setup and they run the tests. And as a result of those tests, they can either verify the theory or not. Um, so they bring the abstraction down into the real, okay? But then there's another domain of science where the theory and now the test, the data from the test, is actually applied in the world. And this is people that may be in science or outside of that domain of science, but let's say the technologists or the engineers. They're the ones who look at the theory and now the experimental data and say, you know, maybe this means we can design a telephone that doesn't need wires. Or, maybe we can devise a machine that does more than just image the bones of the body. Maybe this means we can image the soft tissue. And then they develop these products, and in the real world, we have cell phones and we have CAT scans and MRIs that are applied and useful in the real world. And I think spirituality is like that. Um, we study a tradition and we come to agree or not with its beliefs, its theories, if you will. And we say, oh, well, love is the highest human vibration, or every material thing has some measure of consciousness. Or humans can develop their consciousness and step up the stairway of conscious evolution to become enlightened human beings. That's our theory. Okay, excuse me, I just need to take care of something on what's showing up on my screen. So that's the theory. Those are the beliefs that we either subscribe to or not. And we have to ask how useful they are just as beliefs, maybe not so useful. So we have to then bring them down into the realm of testing them. And in the spiritual realm, our laboratory is ourselves. And the applications of the tests we do within ourselves is our being in the world. So we say, okay, if every physical thing has a measure of consciousness, well, I'm going to see if I can commune with that mountain or that tree, if it's a spirit being and I can have a relationship with it. Or if love is the highest vibration, I'm going to check that out in the real world. I'm going to practice kindness, compassion, or some form of love in my relationships with my family, at work, whatever. and see if my life improves. Okay, so our laboratory, so we have to put our beliefs to the test. That's what makes them practical. That's what turns them into grand ideas, into tools that we can use, spiritual and energetic tools that we can use to do something in the world. So that's how I look at practical spirituality. You know, I always think of Ram Dass when I'm talking about applying our spiritual beliefs in the world, because he has this wonderful saying where he says, if you want to know how you're doing spiritually, go visit your family for a weekend. That's our laboratory. That's us being the experimenters and the technologists, putting it to the test and seeing if we are really the owners of these spiritual powers or not.
Yes, I love that reminder of Ramdas as well, and
Mhm.
yeah, how we can yeah develop ourselves as spiritual beings, and first, have our relationships, of course, better developed within our families to start from there, right? Yes.
Mhm. Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. I like to point out that, that there's so many ways we can practice our spirituality, and in community, in ritual, in ceremony. That's all beautiful. But to truly own the power of our energetic tools, we have to live it moment to moment, day by day in our lives.
yeah. Thank you, Joan.
Mhm.
Our topic is about yeah, how we stay centered in all that is happening in our world. And one of the questions that was also in the description of this talk is, does chaos, calamity, and craziness serve any purpose? So what is your take on that? What is your viewpoint?
Yeah, at first look, it's hard to see how chaos and calamity can be useful. Okay. Um, Looking at it practically in relation to our spirituality, the plain fact is, if there were no problems or conflicts, we might not need a spiritual theory or spiritual tools. Okay. We might want them, but we might not need them. But we're fallible human beings, okay? And we have uh, lots of problems and lots of conflicts, and some of them are small, and some of them are, bring us to our knees. That's just the facts. We have to own that. Um, but we come to know who we are when we're facing the challenges. We don't come to know who we are when everything's hunky-dory and going along well. It's when we hit an obstacle that we find out what we're made of and what powers we're the owners of. Um, Change is part of the world. Change is part of evolution, and we're evolving. Everything is evolving. Um, and when we look at history, um, we can see that it's really some of the most impactful change for the good has come from some of the worst global, the most horrific global conflicts or uh, craziness. Okay. Um, when, from just thinking of some examples, when for most of the human history, in terms of the way we've governed ourselves or we've been governed by others, it's been emperors and monarchs and chieftains who have ruled us. But there came a time in history where those monarchies and empires collapsed in horrific ways that caused all kinds of terrible suffering. But people are resilient and life goes on. And as a result of those cataclysmic changes, some remarkable new ideas arose. For instance, just the thought, maybe we can rule ourselves. and the idea of self-governance arose. And some of those monarchies and empires did not get replaced. They got replaced over time by these amazingly creative ideas such as libertarian or democratic forms of government. You know, we can look at lesser conflicts. If there's a natural disaster, a prolonged drought or something, and people are forced from their land, they move, and they're going to move into the territory that's already occupied by other people. And that's likely to cause conflict or at least strife. It can take time for those two peoples to kind of integrate, to get along. But from those kinds of what might start out as collisions, all kinds of amazing new forms arise. From the merger of two groups, we get amazing new forms of music and art. That's how knowledge is transmitted across the world, the movements of people, and it's not often a peaceful movement. It's usually as a result of calamity or cataclysm. So I like to think that the world that we're enjoying today, which is a pretty darn good world, um, it is what it is because our ancestors were resilient and survived these huge global or regional catastrophes and calamities, and they created from them. They rose from the ashes with all kinds of amazing creations from those calamities and in spite of those calamities. So I think the other thing we have to look at is that for each of us on a more practical local level, chaos can come to us through no fault of our own. A massive flood. We've seen massive floods in the United States recently, and whole towns are washed away. Lives are lost. It's devastating. It's agonizing. But the fact is that life goes on. If you survived your life, you can either be slayed by it and stay stuck, or you can recognize that, like the phoenix, we have to rise from the ashes and move on. We have to rise up. And because of our resiliency, we can do that. And when we're aware enough to recognize that from every calamity in some way or another presents us with opportunities, then some wonderfully creative reimagining of ourselves can happen. Okay. So those are just some of the ways that I think we don't want to invite calamity and chaos and craziness into our lives. But when they do appear, there's a way to look at them as opportunities.
Yeah, that's a really rich explanation. I really, yeah, enjoyed listening as well. And yeah, as I was listening also, it's kind of also part of the cycle of life. It feels so, yeah, we just need to go through it and learn from it, hopefully, as well. And
Um,
yeah,
so much is out of our control. But our responses are always under our will.
yeah, that's very important. Mhm. Yes, and talking about chaos and calamity, and you already mentioned that there are some positive benefits coming out of that, that there's also opportunity, right, to grow or for new challenges. At this time, probably a lot of us feels on a personal level a bit overwhelmed of what is all
Mhm.
happening and seeing all the things, yeah, through media, of course, as well, what's happening, like the suffering or injustice that is happening around us, and how can we all just get more grounded spiritually without yeah, neglecting it, of not turning away from it and not becoming like numb or burn out from it. um, for many of the community here, we're probably following a spiritual path or we're interested in that. Some may think like, oh, what is the purpose of doing this spiritual work? What, result does it have? Do you have anything to say around that?
Of course I do. Right. So here's my take on this, that when it comes to our mystical spiritual energy, the impact of our doing in the world is always greater locally than it is globally. We can get overwhelmed looking at the global problems and thinking, I'm just one person. I can't possibly make an impact. And some of us just turn the TV off, don't read, the newspapers or online or whatever, and just check out. Um, but our power is going to always be useful. And when I say power, I mean our ability to take action, to have the capacities to do something useful and effective. It's always greater locally. So if we step back for a moment, we have to realize that what's happening globally is the result of the cumulative effect of millions and billions of individual choices and actions and beliefs and thoughts. Okay. Things happen one by one, person by person. So a group is getting along with their neighbors, they're peaceful, there are no problems. And then one by one, some people have a grievance and they start demonizing and blaming and finding fault with their neighbors. And that might accrue until suddenly there's a conflict between two people that were peaceful before. It's a drip effect. Okay. In the same way, if we're seeing a horror in the world and we're saying this side is right and that side is wrong, and we're demonizing the side that seems to be violating our ethics or morals or spiritual beliefs, peace happens one by one by one. Each one person saying, okay, maybe they have their story too. Okay, maybe they have their grievance too. Okay, all God's children are deserving of at least kindness and tolerance. One by one, the solution unfolds. Okay. So I think we always have to recognize that we can have an impact, but our impact is going to be more it's going to reverberate in more useful ways locally. So we can ask ourselves, this is where I think we can't top what Gandhi said. Be the change that you want to see in the world. That encapsulates everything I'm about to say and that I've just said. So what do? We stay local, and our energy can have a huge impact. How are we getting along with our family? We might have conflicts in our family. Are we practicing the spiritual principles of kindness or compassion or tolerance for those we don't like in our family? If we can't do that with our family, we can't do it with anybody else. We certainly can't do it with our enemies. Okay. We look around our local community and we say, whose rights are being denied? Who's being canceled? Who's homeless? Who's hungry? And we witness at the local level, and we act at the local level, and we put our beliefs into action at the local level. So, for instance, I might give $50 to my local food kitchen they're going to feed people who are in food insufficiency. And I stop and think and say, okay, my $50 a month, big whoop. What is that going to do in the big global problem of hunger? It's not a drop in the bucket, even for my state or my nation, never mind global hunger. But I stop and I think, my $50, maybe tonight, there's 5 families who are sitting down to spaghetti and a nice fresh salad. And my $50 matters to them. And because goodness accrues, when my $50 is added to 1,000 other donations to that food pantry, think of the impact that has. When my $50 and those other 1,000 people in my community that are giving $50, when that's multiplied by millions of people across my country, or maybe hundreds of millions of people across the globe, then we have a huge impact on the global problem because we're funding organizations here and there and there and there. It's a cumulative effect. Um, so I think of Brian Weiss. Brian Weiss wrote a lot of books, one of which is Messages from the Masters. And in that book, he says that um, if you don't have an opportunity to do great things, then just do small things in great ways. And I think then if we allow that to be our reality, there's never a reason to despair.
Yeah, thank you for that. I think that's very important indeed.
Mhm.
We can all contribute in some way, big and small, in a meaningful way. And what are some practical ways to deal with chaos and challenges on a spiritually, at the personal level, when we sort of, yeah, experiencing them in like in our lives, in our daily
Sure.
lives? Yeah, is
Uh,
there a approach that can help us sort of, yeah, transcend
yeah.
that?
There's so many things I could talk about in terms of our tools, our practical spiritual tools. I'm going to highlight some that I think aren't talked about a lot. Okay. Um, the first is pay attention to the small stuff. Change happens incrementally. It's very, unless it's a disaster like a flood or something outside of our control, but in our lives, the deterioration of a relationship, a problem that develops in our work or with our neighbors or whatever, those things happen incrementally. And we humans we love variety, but we don't like change so much. Okay. We're creatures of habits and we like things to pretty much stay the same. And we're as these little changes, these drip, drip, drip happens in our lives, we tend not to notice them, or we tend to rationalize them away. Say in a relationship, oh, that person's just in a bad mood. They didn't really mean what they said about me, or oh, I know their heart. They're just, whatever. They'll come around. We don't notice the little tiny red flags, okay? But they eventually accumulate into the big red flag of a chaos in our lives, or a big conflict in our lives. So we have to not ignore all the little dissonances. This requires the spiritual tool of self-awareness, and then bringing what we're feeling into self-inquiry. Okay. But we don't notice, or we just rationalize away the small things. And there's a story I like to tell around this point. There's various versions of it on the internet, and I don't know who to attribute it to. I don't know who originated it, but it's my version of it is that just think about this in terms of our human nature and see if this isn't true for you. Um, so there's this guy out jogging, and as he's jogging down this one street, he goes by this house, and there's a porch, and it has a front porch. And on the front porch is an old man and his dog. And the dog is sitting on his haunches and crying and whining like it's in terrible pain. So the jogger stops and says to the old man, your dog, it looks like it's in pain. Um, And what's going on? And the old man says, sitting on a nail. And the jogger's like, well, why doesn't he get up? And the old man says, doesn't hurt enough yet. That's how we are in our lives. It has to hurt enough before we're spurred to really look at the problem, own what we didn't really want to see, recognize we're going to have to deal with something that might be a little rough or ugly. It gets to the point where it hurts too much that we have to do something. So I think our first tool is to deal with the problem when it's small and not when it gets big. That requires us to use another spiritual tool, which is to develop composure. I think composure is one of the most important spiritual tools we have, because when we're facing something that's devastating or enraging or whatever, usually it gets big enough, we have a big emotional reaction to it. Our emotional reactions are usually impulsive. They're coming from the root of our body. Okay, we're not thinking about them, we're just feeling. You did this to me, you're at fault, you're to blame. We attack, we get defensive. And we can't do anything when we're in the throes of impulsive emotion. Okay. And we're speaking about how to stay calm in the midst of chaos and craziness. And our tool, from my point of view anyway, is composure. So what is composure? Composure is the ability to remain calm because you're the owner of self-control. So you feel what you're feeling, but then you're able to bring your response under your will, under your self-control. And then you can act, you can see the problem more clearly. You can act in a more effective and useful way when you have some self-control. Um, you know, Life inevitably is going to lead us through a dark forest at some time or another. And that dark forest is going to be filled with dragons. Okay. It's the old hero's quest motif, right? And when we're going through that dark forest, we'll be put to the test with our tools. Is the dragon going to slay me? Or do I have the tools to slay the dragon? Okay. As I said, it's the rough patches that test our abilities. And if we have useful, practical tools, we can slay the dragons and then emerge from the dark forest back in and reconnect with the world and with life and move forward. But um, I think composure is the tool that helps us do that. And um, think of a disaster. Think of disasters. Who are the most useful people in a calamity? The first responders, the firemen that show up at the raging house fire when there's people trapped inside, the emergency room physician and team when a horribly injured accident victim shows up in the emergency room. Why are they such models for us? Because they're the epitome of people having trained themselves in composure. When a fireman gets to that raging fire, when an emergency room physician is starting to check over someone horribly injured, they're having human emotions. Their adrenaline is rushing through them, but they're not overcome by it because they've trained themselves to remain calm, which is what composure is, self-control. And then they'll know what needs to be done. What's the priority of what needs to be done? And they'll be able to save a trapped family or save a life. Okay. So I think that we can see them as models for ourselves, and that that composure, I think, is a really worthwhile practice. Okay. I'll leave it there. Okay.
Thank you. Yes, self-awareness and composure. I think, yeah, it's definitely something to be aware of yourself, right? In all of your feelings and thoughts and actions as well. And yeah, I want to go also further about this topic about the heavy energy that is here around the world, that is causing or is reflecting also the polarization and the duality that we are here in.
Yeah.
Of course, no other way how to experience life on Earth. So we are in the midst of that. But like on a global level, we also see that people are taking sides, and
Mhm.
that's not necessarily only, it can also be on a local level, of course. And you already mentioned that there's two sides of, the same coin, what is right or wrong, but some people are, of course, very passionate about that they're right, and they have maybe really good yeah, interest for that, and it's very logical why they feel that way. But as we are trained in the mystical and spiritual path, duality is of course also part of it, but we see it in a different way also, more in a wholeness way.
Mhm.
um, can you share a little bit more how you see this, and how we can engage more? I mean, you were already talking about like how you can support certain organizations so you can make some impact, even if it's small, but these things can also big. But how can we be more active and in service, and take on some sort of leadership, but being also aware and conscious and humble and, yeah,
Yeah.
energetically also clean?
Sure. Yeah. We all have our moral and ethical systems, our frameworks. We all have opinions and preferences, and that's fine. That's just being human. Okay. Um, the question is, are we conscious of the way we're holding our opinions and our preferences, and the way we're choosing to act from those beliefs? Okay. And again, well, this is a great question, and there's so much to say, but this is where I want to get really down into the trenches of practical spirituality, because I think that there are two traps in um, both our ethical world and our spiritual world, and they're hypocrisy and self-righteousness. Okay. So in the marketing for this talk, you quoted Marianne Williamson, where she said, "We cannot join a peace protest against a war with war in our hearts." Okay. Um, our we might be outraged, and we might see some horror in the world, and our natural tendency is to choose sides. And sometimes it looks really easy to do that, okay, according to our ethical and moral framework. But we have to also check in on ourselves and see if we're not being hypocritical. Because if, using Marianne Williamson's situation, if you're out acting through joining others in a peace march against a war, and you support one side and you loathe or even hate or demonize the other side, now there's not just one war, there's two wars going on. There's the war between the two parties that you're out trying to mediate some kind of solution to. And then there's a war within yourself between you and the party you're demonizing. And now you've got two wars to fight instead of one. Okay. Um, if we hold the spiritual principle that love is the highest vibration, then we have to ask ourselves how almost impossible it is to bring even tolerance or understanding to what we label as evil. And, there's evil in the world. There's no doubt about that. But in the grand scheme of things, there are usually just oppositional energies. And sometimes those oppositional energies can do horrible things to each other. There's no getting around that. We recognize that. But we have to recognize, as I said before, goodness accrues person by person by person, and so does horror. Horror accrues person by person by person. And each side has their story of how they've been victimized. Each side has their story of how they've been wounded by the other. Each side has their story about how the other one is the main perpetrator in the conflict. Okay. If we want the freedom to hold our own opinion, an opinion that says, I know right from wrong, this group is being victimized and this group is the victimizer. If we have the freedom to have that preference. There's no problem with that. Okay. But if we won't grant that freedom to both sides of the conflict, then we're being hypocrites. The victimizers, those we look at as victimizers, have their story, their grievances. It's probably a long history, a very convoluted set of occurrences over a long period of time that have brought these two groups into conflict. Okay. But if we want to have the freedom to hold an opinion and to say right and wrong, we have to grant that to other people as well. It's really being in the trenches. We don't have to like everybody. We don't have to agree with everybody. We have the right to say, according to my moral framework, and that's wrong, that's causing suffering. But I'm talking here about this kind of spiritual sensibility that we have, where we just make things black and white, right or wrong. It's much more messy than that, and we have to acknowledge that. There's a sense of self-righteousness that can trip us up, that we're the spiritual ones, that we're the evolved ones, and those people are less than or less developed or those kinds of things. So I think spiritual hypocrisy and self-righteousness can kind of go hand in hand. How do we get past that? Well, it's difficult. As I said, it's perfectly normal to have preferences. It's the way we're holding them in the larger picture that can lead us toward these difficulties. And it's usually our ego that's causing this split within us, this difficulty within us. I'm going to go back to Marianne Williamson and some things she said in her book from A Return to Love. I actually pulled out two quotes around this question. I'm just going to read them, okay? And then we'll talk about them in terms of the dangers or the traps of hypocrisy and self-righteousness. So she said, so just really let this reverberate through you. Our perceptions of other people often become the battleground between the ego's desire to judge and our Holy Spirit's desire to accept people as they are. The ego is the great fault finder. It seeks out the faults in ourselves and others. The Spirit seeks out our innocence. It wants to see us as we really are, and since we're all the perfect creations of God, He loves what He sees. The places in our personality where we tend to deviate from love are not our faults, but from our wounds. God doesn't want to punish us, but to heal us. And this is how He wishes to view the wounds in other people. And the second quote goes right along with this. The ego always emphasizes what someone has done wrong. The spirit always emphasizes what they've done right. The Course of Miracles, which is a book that spiritual teaching that she teaches, the Course in Miracle likens the ego to a scavenger dog that seeks out every scrap of evidence about our brother's guilt and lays it at its master's feet. The spirit similarly seeks out its own, it sends out its own messengers and seeks out evidence of our brother's innocence. Okay. So we're being hypocritical or self-righteous when we see others' guilt and not our own, when we see others' faults and not our own, when we refuse to look for any justification for the opponent's beliefs or behaviors, but we can always come up with ways to justify our own. The point I'll really leave you with, which is way down in the trenches of us owning our spirituality, it's that people, when people do evil things, it's not that nobody is born evil. Nobody is born outraged and devastated or hateful or angry. Okay. Something in their life has wounded them. All of us are wounded from the travails of our lives. Okay. And people react from their wounds. But here's the thing, wounds can be healed. And we have to make space for that healing. Okay. When self-righteousness declares that the other side is evil, wrong, and not worthy of even our compassion, then there's no space for the wounded to heal. And in this regard, I'd say that in the spiritual trenches, we might give our support to the side that we think is the good side and protest against the bad side, but actually it's the victimizers. It's the ones we identify as victimizers who most need our love, who most need our prayers. Okay, not just the people that are suffering, who we see as victims.
Wow.
Just
Like
let
really,
that hang there for a minute. Okay.
yeah, it's very, very powerful what you all shared, and also the quotes and the reflections. I really honor all that. And I do want to ask you something as well as part of your teachings about us being the third level and evolving to the fourth level, and how working or being on that ladder can sort of help us to walk this more in grace, to deal with all of this chaos and calamity and separation and all of these things. Um, would you be willing to share something about that?
Yeah, it's a little bit difficult to really talk about. This is called the conscious patanyan in the Andean tradition. It's at the heart of the tradition. It's a stairway of developmental levels, our conscious development. And all human beings are free to consciously develop. We don't have to, and we can live a happy life at any level, even the lower levels. Each level has its Sami-filled or light-filled ways of being in it, and its heavy ways of being with it. So it's kind of difficult to talk about the lift from the third to the fourth level without knowing a lot more about the conscious patanyan. But I can say that in the heavier aspects of the third level, this is where we're on the lookout more for heaviness rather than light, where way more aware of people's faults than of their, um, their wonderful qualities. Where we believe in, if you get too much, I won't have enough. Okay, so where our viewpoint is a competitive one rather than a cooperative one. We notice differences rather than similarities, those kinds of things. Okay, we are very territorial. You know, my house, my family, my religion, my ethnicity, my flag, my border. Okay, those kinds of things. And most of the world is at the third level. Most of us are at the third level. The most difficult developmental leap to make is from the third to the fourth level. Because the fourth level is where we start owning all the things I just talked about, which can take a lifetime to develop. Okay. So at the third level, it's going to be, self and other, seeing the difference. At the fourth level, we're going to recognize differences, but we're going to go deeper and we're going to say, you know what? I don't see a man and a woman. I don't see a white person and a brown person. I don't see a rich person and a poor person. I see two human beings. Okay. At the fourth level, it's about cooperation rather than competition. At the fourth level, it's how can we both benefit rather than win-lose? How can we both benefit? At the fourth level, it's about rather than harping on our differences, let's talk about where we're the same, where we're alike, where we're in agreement so that we can reconcile, those kinds of things. So it's a big leap, but when we recognize that most of the world is at the third level, and the struggle in the world right now, so not all of it, but most of the struggle in the world right now, the horrors in the world, are two third level powers clashing at the third level. It can't be win-win. I have to dominate you. I have to rule you. I have to own your land. I have to take your resources, all of those kinds of things. Okay. I have to get my way. So a lot of it is because of that, but a lot of the chaos is because at some level, humanity is ready to make a species-wide leap from the third to the fourth level. And the fourth level is always a global family rather than just local family. It doesn't dismiss the local. We take everything that we learned at a lower level and we bring it up to the next level with us. So it's an expansion of the self. Okay. And at the fourth level it's a global level, the global human family. Okay. Universal rights rather than just national rights or, certain groups having certain rights. And there's a real struggle for us to get there. And most of the world is not ready. And it's a huge change. It's a huge shift in perception to go from the third to the fourth level. And people don't like change. And people misunderstand this change from the third to the fourth level. And what happens? They rush back down to the second level. And the second level is the level of tribalism and, the survival instincts. It's not just, I don't disagree with you. It's that you're threatening my well-being or even my life or my way of life. So fear contracts us back down to the second level and we get this massive polarization, which is really second level stuff, the tribal, the survival impulsive instincts, not a lot of self-awareness, not a lot of self-inquiry, but a lot of righteousness, self-righteousness. Okay, so it's a very complex kind of a way of looking at a human development and stuff. I don't know if that made any sense or anything, but we have to just be where we are. We can't be any place we're not. Okay. We have to always start right where we are. And most of us are at the third level, sometimes bouncing around at the second level when there's groups and people and family members we can't stand or that trigger us or that we're projecting onto. And sometimes we're really owning our spiritual powers and that lifts us to the fourth level. So we're bouncing around a lot and it's chaos. It can feel like chaos, okay? But if we recognize, if we step back at that theoretical level and can see what's going on, what are the possibilities, then we can then come back down to the level of application and maintain our composure and deal with it in useful and effective ways.
Thank you, Joan, for answering this. I think it really made total sense, what you said. And yeah, it's very relevant to our topic today. I think that, what we're experiencing here is a lot of third level and perhaps second level of the conflicts and separation and all of these things that are happening. I want to also ask you further about dealing with these heaviness of the world. That is, of course, that you were already saying is like we need to deal with ourselves first and see how we deal with our families and, start from there. Is there like a practice that you could lead us through that you would like to share with us that can
Yeah.
help us, navigate through these difficult situations?
Yes. So I stretched myself a little for this talk today. And in the practice we're going to do, I'm going to ask you to stretch. We're going to get in the trenches of our spirituality and experiment with ourselves as the owners of Munai. In the Andes, Munai is love, but it's not the emotion or the feeling of love by itself. It's love under our will. Okay. It's a choice for love. And if we believe the premise that love is the highest vibration and love heals, let's put it to the test. We're just going to have a little laboratory. So be playful with this, but I'm also pretty serious in this practice, so we'll give it a shot. But you have to understand a few things. I don't know how much some of you know about the Andean tradition, so I need to explain 4 things about what we're going to do today. Okay, so the first is that Munai is love under our will. Okay, it's not just emotion, it's like a platonic level feeling. Okay, and it's like Stephen Levine, who's a teacher and a writer, I think he's passed on now, but his definition, I think, is the perfect definition of Munai, which is that love is the emptiness of everything but love. Okay. So we're going to work with various aspects of our body and our mystical body. Okay. And the aspects we're going to work with are one is called the Inca Muyu, which is your Inca seed. Just think about it as the center of the self, the higher self. Okay. In the Andes, this is what this is an energetic structure that holds the potential for you to be godlike in the human form. So it's that whole conscious patanyan, our spiritual development. It's all held in potential here. Okay. And this is in the center of our body. So it's just below your rib cage and it's halfway between the front and back of your body. That's the center of the self, the center of the mandala of the sacred self. Okay, so we're going to work with that point in our body. And then we have a center that's above and below the Inca seed. The center that's above the Inca seed is called the Sonco, which translates from Quechua into heart. But this is not the center of our heart. It's not about the physical organ of our heart. This is the center of our feelings. And the capacity here is Munai, our love under our will, our choice for love. Okay, so this is the center of the love we're going to work with. And this center has no heaviness. We never have to kind of clean this center. It's pure light living energy. So when we check in here, we're going to be able to generate an enormous amount of love. Okay. But then we come down to the belly. We're going to work at the belly. That's called the Cusco, the navel in Quechua. This is the place of our personal power, not power and dominance, but power is just our capacity to do anything in the world. We either have the power to do things or we don't. Okay, so it's power in that way. And this is where we act, the power comes out, we act in the world through our Cusco. This is the place we send out sekes to all kinds of people and groups, and even to causes and beliefs, okay? And these attachments that we send out can be heavy or light, okay? So those are the centers we're going to work with. And what I'm going to ask you to do, so I want you to think of a group, a person, or a group of people that you can't stand, that trigger you, that you think are bad or evil or victimizers or oppressors or whatever. Someone that really ignites you emotionally, okay? I think we all have someone to some degree or another, whether it's a family member we refuse to talk to because they betrayed us, or an ex-spouse or partner, or it's some group in the world. Just own your feelings about this. We have to be truthful. If we're not truthful with ourselves, we can't be truthful with anybody else. And Spirit knows, and it will call us out on that. We can't be hypocrites. So think of someone that triggers you, you don't like. All right. I'll give you just another minute to just really drop into that. Okay. So now we're going to begin the energy work. Okay. So the way I always like to start energy work is to just close my eyes, just drop into your body. Just be in your body, in the state you're in, feeling however you feel right now. Just be yourself in the state you're in right now. We always have to start from where we are. And then we have an energy body around us, like a bubble around us. So expand your awareness from your physical body out to include the metaphysical you, this bubble of your energy body around you. Together, your body and this bubble of your metaphysical energy is called the wasi. It's the temple of you, the completeness of you. Okay, so just be in your wasi, the temple of the self. And now bring your awareness, concentrate your awareness down in the center of your body, where I said the Inca seed is, the center of the self, the higher self. Okay. And get in touch with your higher self, your highest potential there in the center of your body. This is a source of enormous light living energy. Okay. And just feel this light living energy that is available to you. You've used it to grow and develop to who you are now, and you can use it to grow and develop to be godlike in the flesh. So just drop into this center of pure light living energy in the center of the self. This is also a generator of Munai. So feel this love for yourself. Feel yourself the way source energy, God, the great mystery, sees you, which is perfect and whole and innocent. And now really dropping into this flow of light living energy. use your intention to move a stream of it up from the center of your body, up into the chest area, up into the sonko, to the center of your feelings. This center, the sonko, is not the physical heart, but it's the heart of ourselves and our emotions, our feelings. This is a huge repository of love, of munai. When you integrate your Inca seed and your sonko, automatically an amazingly high vibration of munai is generated. So feel this munai and take this love into for yourself through yourself. Accept and love yourself and take it through every measure of your being. We can only love others in proportion to how we love ourselves. So bathe yourself in this love, generated within the core of your being for yourself. And now drop your attention down into your belly. And it's like you're looking out the eye of your navel. And if you look out the eye of your navel, you'll see the person or the group you can't stand hovering in front of you in their own bubble. It's like they're suspended in a bubble in front of you. And just feel your feelings about them. Don't sugarcoat things. Own your feelings, your outrage, your disgust, whatever it is, own it. And feel those energies, those emotions streaming as attachments, beliefs, feelings from your belly and attaching to the bubble of this person, this group. This is some of the energy you're sending to them, whether you're conscious of it or hopefully not unconscious to it, but trying to be conscious of it now. Just feel the power of your emotions. Intolerance, blame, fault finding, outrage, whatever it is. And now I want you to just keep that in motion, but bring your attention back to the sonko, to the chest, where the sami of your Inca seed and your heart are integrated, producing munai. And now I want you to use that munai as a tool. Stream it straight down your body into your belly and let it ride on the wave of your outrage and your disgust that you're attached to with this person outside you. Let the love ride on the back of that other wave, the heavy wave. Perceive how both of these energies are real within you. Munai is real and hucha or heaviness is real. And now you're putting your munai to the test. You're allowing your munai to ride on the wave of your hucha, your heaviness, bringing with it its compassion, its tenderness, its healing ability. And just you don't need to do anything. Just let your love flow through this cord of your outrage or disgust, your heaviness, and perceive what might happen. Perceive how those heavy feelings might begin to be reduced or transformed or lessened. Just witness. Allow the power of love that lives within you to do what it does best, heal. Heal your own hypocrisy, heal your own self-righteousness, heal your own inability to open the space of healing between you and the person that or group that you find objectionable. Don't try to make it happen. Just be aware that as it might be happening, be aware so that you don't miss it. And now you can stop the flows. You can detach your any heaviness from the bubble of the oppositional person or group. And you can take this moon eye back up into your Sanko and again, bathe yourself in love. Fill every nook and cranny of your wasi, your body, and your mystical bubble with love. And just allow the bubble the other person is in to dissipate and disappear, and just be in yourself. Seeing and feeling yourself as spirit sees and knows you. Despite all our wounds, all our faults, spirit sees our innocence, sees our value, our perfection, our potential for that, and loves us. That's just theory unless we can feel it for ourselves. And then when you're ready, you can soften your focus and end the practice. Okay.
Thank you, Joan.
You're welcome.
It's a good practice. And yeah, something to remind ourselves to practice more often, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, if we're not working on the places, if we're not seeing ourselves truthfully, okay, owning where we have work to do, we can't do the work. I mean, we can't solve a problem we can't see. Okay, right? And we can't, Einstein said we can't solve a problem at the same level that created the problem. Well, we have this amazing energy within us. We're generators of moon eye. And so when we see our own weaknesses, faults, um, we become our own laboratory. We apply our spiritual principles to ourselves first. We change the state of our being so that we can be differently with other people. We can't change other people, we can only change ourselves. When we change ourselves, we start to see other people differently. And we're thinking, maybe they did their work. Well, maybe not. Maybe we just did ours and we're just seeing them different, feeling differently, able to interact differently. I don't know, probably a little bit of both.
Mhm. Yeah. There's a lot of food for thought, I think, in this whole, topic as well. It's
Mhm.
very rich. And I think we can maybe answer maybe some questions from the audience here as well, if you're okay with that.
Sure.
Um, yeah, I've been looking into the chat and there's been like quite some interesting questions rising and some conversations. So I think people were quite engaged. And I like to ask you this question. If you could perhaps share something about how the Caddo people dealt with the invasion of the Spaniards. Um, I believe that you may talk about it also in your courses, but since you were
Yeah.
talking earlier about the monarchy and all of these
Mhm.
establishments, and that
Yeah.
also fell. This is, of course, maybe a consequence that happened afterwards as well.
Yeah.
But could you
Hmm.
perhaps share something
Yeah.
about, yeah, um,
Yeah. Well,
the-
of course, I can't speak for what they felt, but I can tell you what I've heard from the Pacos if this subject has come up, or from my teacher Juan. And of course, it was a disaster. It was horrible. Millions of Andeans were killed, and their spiritual system was denied them. Or they tried to deny it. It went underground. Their temples were destroyed. Their way of life was destroyed. They ended up becoming serfs under this colonial power. It was horrific. Okay, there's no way around that. All kinds of diseases came, and things like that. And yet, at a higher level, at the more abstract level, the Pacos tell us that this meeting was kind of inevitable because there's three human powers. All of our powers can be put into three buckets, the Andeans tell us. Munai, love under our will. Yachai, our personal experiences that from which we learn, that we then gain knowledge of, and we gain wisdom through. So understanding, knowledge, learning. And Yankai, our ability to take action in the world. And the prophecies of the Andes, the legends of the Andes, say that God distributed these three human powers among different peoples of the world. The Andeans are the carriers for the world of Munai. The Westerners are the carriers of Yachai, okay, knowledge. We're the ones that exploded across the world because we were scientists and thinkers and doers and technologists, and we invented reading and writing and science, and we had amazing abilities to then spread across the world, unlike other peoples. But the Andeans say we all have to meet each other. We have to share our gifts. And the meetings in the past have been horrific, but the prophecies of the Andes is that these three human powers, the different civilizations of the world, are going to come together in Aini, in reciprocity, with well-being, and each share their power with the other, so that we're all owners of all three powers. We're all owners of love, of wisdom, and of action. Okay. So, for instance, the Pacos have said, Juan has told me, one of his teachers, Don Andreas, said this. And I've spoken just briefly with some of the Pacos over the years who have said basically the same thing: is, oh my gosh, we want you here. You're free to share our tradition, because this is for all humanity. So there's no like cultural appropriation. If you come with an open heart, we'll share everything with you. Please take it out into the world, because God wants our Moonai to get out into the world. That's part of the prophecy. And of course, we accept, and we're delighted that you're bringing your Yachai to us, because our history, we have been devoid of Yachai, unschooled, illiterate, very isolated, living very difficult agrarian lives. Okay. They want the knowledge of the world. Okay. And that's a huge gift we can bring them. Okay. So they see this as the inevitable sharing of gifts between different kinds of groups in the world. And it's a necessary sharing, because they're not without Yachai, but they don't have anywhere near the development of Yachai that we have. And we in the West are not so great with our feelings. And they're the owners of feelings, and they can teach us how to really drop into our feelings and so forth. So in that sense, it was a horror. The colonial period was a horror for the Incas, and it was also a blossoming of prophecies they've held for a long time, of the spiritual evolution of humanity, because we come together in reciprocity. And even though if our initial meeting is horrific and oppositional and warlike, eventually we're going to learn to be in Aini, to be in loving reciprocity. And we have to get through the messy time to get there.
Mhm. Thank you, Joan. And if you talk about, yes, these messy times, that is still here, probably there was something, a question in the chat as well about should we make the dragon our, ally instead of, fighting against it?
Yes, absolutely. And in the limitations of the context, the time constraints of this talk, there are so many other possibilities when we meet the dragon. Okay. So my point at that point was it's a test for our ownership of our spiritual abilities. And so the dragon will either slay us or we can slay the dragon because we have power. Okay. But certainly we can spend a little time with the dragon and we'll end up befriending it and it becomes our ally. And ultimately, we'll suck the energy of the dragon in and realize the dragon is us. It's just an illusion that it was separate from us. And there's all kinds of other possibilities. Mhm.
Thank you, Joan. There's another question also about when we spoke a little bit about the third and fourth level. I know it's a very, yeah, rich topic, of course, but someone was asking like there aren't there already plenty of people, like indigenous peoples who are already on their fourth level?
Mhm. There's a lot of evidence from a lot of different places that um, only a small portion of the world is at the fourth level. And here's why. A lot of us display a lot of fourth level capacities, but we're not at the fourth level. We can't claim to be owners of fourth level capacities because in order to claim ourselves as having attained a level, all three of our human powers have to be developed to the fourth level. So our feelings, our wisdom, and our ability to act in the world all have to be refined to the fourth level. And there's not many people who are fully developed to the fourth level. Our feelings might be developed or our action might be developed, but we haven't developed all of us. And we'll find that in different situations, we'll discover that our ability to be at a level either rises or falls. So I might consistently be at the fourth level in a teaching situation with my students. And then I go visit, in-laws, and suddenly, man, I'm third level. They got their nose in my business and blah, 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 blah. I'm third level. Okay. And then I might be, have I don't know, a conflict with a boss or a neighbor, and I just get triggered, and that impulsive, explosive energy comes out, and suddenly, bam, I'm down at the second level until I'm self-aware enough to say, clean up your act, raise your vibration, and deal with the situation in a healthier way. So we're bouncing around all the time. And one other thing I would like to say is I always say we need to take off our rose-colored glasses when it comes to spirituality. There's no spiritual path. There's no choice of spiritual path. I like to say there's only one spiritual path, your life. That's your spiritual path. Everything else is your tool bag. Strategies and tools you use to go through your life. Your life is the unfolding of your spiritual self. Okay. And there's nothing special about indigenous peoples. Nature's red in tooth and claw. And every group, there's not a group that history tells us didn't have warfare or seek to overtake other people or grab territory or be, judgmental and have enemies. There's not a group. Now, the Andeans are very unusual. The Andean civilization is unusual. There may be others, I just don't know about them. But the Andean civilization was really unusual because the archaeological record and the anthropological record tell us that warfare really didn't erupt in the Andes until 650 AD. That's pretty late in human history. But then they became a warring nation, the Waris. So everybody, we're not going to sentimentalize the indigenous peoples or nature. They're just human beings who live in a different environment than us. Believe me, I've been with the Pacos and they can be nasty to each other. Okay. You know, they can be jealous of each other. They can be snooty with each other. They're human beings too. So there's certain evidence, and I can't go into where it comes from, but it's pretty much the same in different sources, that only between maybe 10, excuse me, that only about maybe at most 10%, 8 to 10% of the world population right now is consistently fourth level. Not a lot. We have a long way to go. But you know what? We'll never get there if we don't practice. That's what this talk is all about. Practical spirituality. Let's practice so that we have moments of it so that we can own it. We can't wish ourselves there. We have to do the work. And the work's in our everyday life, moment by moment.
Thank you. Yes, it's part of
Yeah.
nature also, yes, to fall back and bounce back, as you said.
Yeah.
Uh,
I have to say, I'm sorry if I got a little strident there. Okay. Sounded like I was lecturing people. I don't mean that. I'm just passionate about the practicality of spirituality. I'm not into just ritual and ceremony and having supernatural experiences. They're useful in some respects. I'm just a person and a teacher who wants to say, let's get in the trenches together and do it.
yes.
So some people can take that and some people can't. So anyway.
I have just a few more. One is related to what you just said. And just to clarify, someone is asking here, is a spiritual path an individual one? I know that you said a spiritual path is that you're alive and you get all the tools
Yeah.
to make it, as how you like it and magical as possible and fulfilling, of course. But how do you see that? Is it individual or is it also
Yeah.
collective?
Our work is individual, but life is never individual. Unless you decide to check out and go up into a cave in Tibet and just live in the cave for 30 years. But even then, someone's going to probably have to bring you some food or something. Okay. Check on your health. Nothing is individual in life. Life is relationships, which is why it can get so messy and chaotic so easily. Life is relationships. And just in the trenches, in the physical everyday life, and ultimately when we progress, we'll see that, I like to say we're each the center of the universe, because we can only know the world through our own perception. We can't ever really know each other, so we're alone at the center of the universe, right? But the center's the center. Everybody's there at the same time. Even though we're having an individual perception, we're all at the center at the same time. So we're all one. Ultimately, we're all one being, which is whatever source is. We all came from the singularity, and we're all end up at the omega point, you know, which is some kind of singular consciousness. So I like to say that the way we have to apply our spirituality, our spiritual tools, is in the appropriate way, in the appropriate domain. There's lots of different levels. The individual life, the life with you as part of a family, the life is with you as part of a spiritual community, as part of a, all kinds of different causes, the life of you as a citizen of your state or province, the life of you as a citizen of your country, the life of you as a human being. There's all these different levels, and sometimes the spiritual physics operating at those levels is a little different at each level. Way too much to go into here, but it's not the same in every level. Love consciousness might transcend every level. It's infused through every level. But the kind of tools we use and things like that, they might change according to the domain we're working in at the moment. So
Mhm.
anyway.
Thank you. And I think this is the last question I want to ask you from our group here,
Mhm.
which is actually related to what you said with the singularity, perhaps, or that we ultimately also one. But this person is asking, what if chaos and calamities are being generated for us? And what if there's like a benevolent intelligence that is asking or inviting us to grow and to evolve and shift our consciousness? Can we reframe our situation out of victimization? Can we see this as a gift? And who's willing to
Yeah,
do it? Yes.
yeah. That's a huge question, and I can tell you that from my personal point of view, I'll just speak for myself. There's all kinds of ways to answer that question, and lots of differing viewpoints, because really you're asking, what's the nature of source? What's the source energy? Okay. So I tend to think this way, that one of the steps in our spiritual maturity is taking back the anthropomorphization of spirit, to stop projecting our humanness onto a tree spirit, a mountain spirit, and certainly onto whatever God is. God does not have human emotions or human agendas or a human moral system. That's a projection onto it. So it's not going to be looking at us saying, yeah, you got some problems. I'm going to send you a challenge, and it's, hopefully you'll see it as an opportunity. I'm going to test you. That's human dynamics. I don't believe source is human that way. I don't believe we have fate or destiny, and I don't believe spirit wants anything for us except for us to recognize that we're all part of one thing, and that anyway, it gets complicated. But I would say that kind of question for me, it's just for me, is another way we anthropomorphize spirit. We see everything through a human lens. And you know what? I think when we finally get past the early gates of heaven where we see our relatives and everything's like another human world, we're going to see it becomes less and less and less like what we know of our form here, and that there's a gazillion other forms and ways of being that have nothing like human beings are, and that we reduce spirit drastically when we insist it has, or spirits, when we project our humanness onto it. So I think that might be happening at some level, but that's not my view, because I don't see spirit as having a human agenda.
Thank you, Joan. I think
Mm-hmm.
also a difficult question, to be honest, but
Yeah,
perhaps that it is part of a lot greater cycle, and we are all one. So it's all part of, some sort of movement that we're going,
yeah.
and we're definitely not
It,
alone only, right?
let me say one other thing about that. You know what? We can't know. We cannot know the answer to that, right? But we're going to have a belief about it. I mean, we can't be in the spiritual realm without asking, like, what's God or what's the great mystery? Okay. I mean, we can. Buddhists don't really deal with that. They just say God's uncharacterizable. So we're not going to deal with a deity. Okay. So there are traditions that will not deal with those kind of questions. Um, And in that sense, I agree with the Buddhists. Let's just see what we can develop in ourselves, how refined we can be in our consciousness and not worry about what else, because we can't know till we're there. I mean, even the highest level of unity consciousness, who knows if it's really unified with first cause or it's some intermediary? We don't know. They're unanswerable questions.
Mhm.
But our actions matter. We have to have some beliefs. Even an atheist has beliefs, or agnostic. I don't know. It could be, maybe not. That's a belief. Okay. We can't live without beliefs. So we have to have a beliefs. The thing is, our beliefs change as we change. So we have to be willing to allow it to grow and change and evolve with us. And sometimes as we step up, they become more and more clear and concrete. And sometimes they become more and more amorphous and abstract. I'm kind of at the abstract place right now.
Thank you, Joan.
You're welcome.
Yeah, it's really a great talk here, presentation, and yeah, I think we all need to do our own work
Yeah.
and see what we can create and act out from it. So thank you for again reminding that and also that practice, which is very practical, of course, and
Yeah.
effective to apply as well in our everyday life. And yeah, to become more of a fourth level person, hopefully, right? As we
Mhm.
are doing our work.
Yeah.
So, would you like to share, as we're closing a bit here, like what you have all coming up in terms of your work
Mhm.
and how
Yeah.
can find you?
Yeah. My focus in teaching is mostly on the Andean mystical tradition. So most of my classes are about the Andean tradition, but there are some that move outside that, energy healing and doing psychological work like shadow work. But just about all my courses are you have to have been through the Andean, what I call the foundation training. So it's kind of restrictive that way, but I have a lot of different courses. Um, my I have a blog site, which I apologize for in advance because it's 10 years old now, and I had to start with a free WordPress blog, and now there's 10 years of blogs on it, and it's just an enormous technical undertaking to get them moved up to a decent looking website. So this is just a free WordPress, and it has pop-up ads and stuff. You're just going to have to, people know that read my blog know they have to just get beyond that and stuff. But I've had 10 years of posts about Andean spirituality and other things. It's called Kenti Wasi, Qentiwasi. No U after the Q. Kenti Wasi means house of the hummingbird. So I post there but just now once a month. And there's also a tab, Learn the Andean Sacred Arts and upcoming workshops. So that's the place to go to look up my classes and stuff. I am just not out there. I don't have a website. I don't market. People just find me, and I'm happy that they do, and I'm delighted to meet them. So I post on my Facebook page only to announce a class or something. So I don't have a big web presence. But if you want to know what I do, it would be Kenti Wasi. Okay. And I don't use, in the Andes, we say never waste your energy. Okay, so I kind of decided having all kinds of formal registration forms and taking deposits was a big waste of energy. So I don't use any kind of formal registration form. I don't require a deposit to hold your space. You just email me and I say, yep, I'm holding your place in the class. Be in touch when registration ends. It's super easy and but super informal. Okay, so that's where you can go to look at what I'm offering. Then my main offering is called what I call the Foundation Training in Andean Mysticism. I teach it 3 times a year. It's a 3-month class. We meet once a week on a Tuesday afternoon, and I provide recordings of it for those who can't be with us live. The last one of the year starts on September, I want to say 14th or something like that. And it's almost full. There's a few places, but if you're interested in joining, you can email, you can read about it on my blog site, and then just email me, see if there's still spaces when you do. So, mhm. And I
Yeah.
have a ton of podcasts out there. You can Google and just all kinds of podcasts, many through Mayumi and Trisha and the Shamans Directory, which is just a powerhouse of action and intent and love and getting people out there. And I appreciate it. Thank you. You know, so.
Thank you, Joan. We appreciate you. And
Mhm.
yeah, since there's still a few places left, I can highly recommend her courses. They're really offer a lot of depth and insight, as you already experienced it today here with Joan, and her teaching style is absolutely, yeah, wonderful. So thank you, Joan, for sharing your teachings and all of your perspectives here and your wisdom. It's really an honor to have you here with us again. And yeah, your presence is always a gift. And also, thank you so much for your support. And in the directory as well, we really honor you so much deeply. Thank you.
Well,
And
thank you. And it's been my pleasure. And thank all of you for taking the time and showing up and listening so intently and going into the trenches and putting your love to the test. I'm so curious to see how that went, but of course, we can't do that in this context. So, but anyway, thank you all.
thank you. And to everyone who's viewing, also thank you so much for joining. And also to let you know that this event has been recorded. And all of the links that were shared in the chat will also be included underneath the description of the video. So you can always look further for Joan as well. And this is also to notify you that we take the month of August off from live events because we're also taking a bit of a break here, but we will be sharing our monthly newsletter. So the August newsletter will be sent, which will be full of interesting shamanic earth-based, yeah, courses and resources and other opportunities. So stay tuned for that. And yeah, we look forward to welcoming you again to our next Shamans Directory live events from September and onwards. So we hope to see you then again. And thank you again for joining this space together. I think it was really beautiful, and we're now closing our session. So I wish you all a beautiful day and weekend, and also a wonderful rest of your summer. Thank you.